Over a span of 25 years, I've had the privilege of singing for many functions and crusades for the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. At those events, I have witnessed tens of thousands walking forward and giving their lives to Jesus Christ. For his worldwide outreach, Mr. Graham has been recognized as the most widely heard evangelist in history. And he's received many accolades and honors, but to God only. I invite you to join me, Wintley Phipps, on a day of discovery. In word and in song, I will explore with you the early intimate moments in the life of Billy Graham. The dairy farm boy, the Fuller Brush salesman, the dishwasher, the student who preached his first sermon, to wildlife and treetops. Discover what a calling from God looks like. Discover the offer of an adventure in life you could never create for yourself. At 11 o'clock on the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, World War I ended as the Central Powers and the Allies signed an armistice. Millions had been killed, and the world was weary from war. Yet during the next year, a second wave of deadly influenza took more lives around the world than the war. The world was weary of death. Born William Franklin Graham on November 17, 1918. He was the firstborn of dairy farmer William Graham and his wife Morrow in Point Road near Charlotte, North Carolina. Billy Frank, as they called him, grew up surrounded by a loving family and rugged discipline for the work of keeping the farm running. His father was hardworking and innovative. His mother, devoted to making their home a refuge centered on the Word of God. Billy Frank was a curious child growing up. His mother took him to the doctor because he never slowed down and she feared something was wrong with him. His first grade teacher could never get him to say anything in class. The only early sign of any direction in his life came from his desire to play professional baseball. In his autobiography, Billy Graham recounted that he had to rise at 3 a.m. every morning to help milk 20 cows before breakfast and gather and milk them again after school. The family also had many acres of corn, wheat, rye, and barley, as well as vegetable acreage that needed Billy's attention. Billy said, "I was taught that laziness was one of the worst evils and that there was dignity and honor in labor." And during the Great Depression as a young teen, Billy said, "Growing up in those years taught us the value of nickels and dimes." When he had some downtime during a rain or in the quiet evening, Billy Frank said, "I like to sneak away into the hay barn and lie on a sweet-smelling and slippery pile of straw, listening to the raindrops hit the tin roof and dreaming." It was a sanctuary that helped shape my character. Imagine it with me. A farm boy slips away for some time alone, a quiet break from the day's labor to think about life. No TV, certainly, no internet or electronics. Solitude has its place and power in our lives. Though raised in a religious family that read the Bible together, Billy still had a lingering uncertainty about God. He put it this way, As a teenager, a family Bible reading, praying, psalm singing, and church going, all these had left me restless and resentful. I had even tried guiltily to think of ways of getting out of all those activities as much as I could. In a word, I was spiritually dead. 1934 would be a significant year for 16-year-old Billy and his family. During the Depression, a spiritual apathy had settled into the Charlotte area. Billy's father and several local Christian businessmen decided to invite a well-known Southern evangelist named Mordecai Ham to hold a revival. Mr. Graham invited the men to pray in one of his pastures, while Mrs. Graham held an all-day prayer meeting in her home for the women. Vernon Patterson, one of the men who led the prayer meeting in the pasture, prayed that out of Charlotte, the Lord would raise up someone to preach the gospel to the ends of the earth. William and Morrow had their 16-year-old son Billy in their prayers, that he would attend. And Billy Frank must have been the last person on their mind when they prayed for God to call a world evangelist from among them. Billy did not want to attend the meetings, but his friend Albert McMacken, who was about the same age as Billy, knew that Billy Frank would go to the crusades with him if he let Billy drive his vegetable truck. And as Billy tells it, Albert added the incentive of letting me drive his old vegetable truck into town for the meeting, loaded with as many folks, white and black, as he could get to go along. In the midst of the revival meetings, Billy found his heart in turmoil. He went home one night and thought deeply in his bedroom. Billy said of that time, "What I needed to know for certain was that I was right with God. I could not help but to admit to myself that I was purposeless and empty-hearted." And that night, he knelt by his bedside to make it right with God. A community's prayer and a caring friend with a vegetable truck brought us Billy Graham as much as evangelist Mordecai Ham. Lesson 1, on a calling from God, he can use anyone, and no one can find God alone.
When I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my richest gain I count but loss, and pour contempt on all my pride. Forbid it, Lord, that I should boast, save in the death of Christ my God, or the vain things that charm me most, I sacrifice them to his head, his hands, his feet. Sorrow and love flow mingled down. Did there such love and sorrow meet, or thorns compose so rich a crown?
Billy said, before my conversion, I tended to be touchy, oversensitive, envious of others, and irritable. Now, I deliberately try to be courteous and kind to everyone around me. I was experiencing what the Apostle Paul had described. The old was gone. The new has come.
I believe for every drop of rain that falls, a flower grows. I believe that somewhere in the darkest night a candle glows. I believe for everyone who goes astray, someone will come to show the way. I believe, I believe above the storm, the smallest prayer will still be heard. I believe that someone in that great somewhere hears every word. Every time I hear a newborn baby cry, or touch a leaf, or see the sky, then I know I believe above the storm, the smallest prayer will still be heard. I believe that someone in that great somewhere hears every word. Every time I hear a newborn baby
In 1936, Billy Graham graduated from Sharon High School with 25 others. At the invitation of a friend, Billy became a Fuller Brush salesman. And although North Carolina had one of the lowest per capita incomes in the country at that time, Billy quickly plowed ahead of other salesmen with his vigorous work style nurtured on the farm. He worked from sunrise to sunset, knocking on doors, talking with people, learning the hardships, flexibility, and inconveniences of constant travel and conversation. Billy said of that summer, "Selling Fuller brushes taught me a lot about myself, about human nature, and about communicating a message to people, even if I had to talk my way in and out of all kinds of situations." Our second observation of a calling from God: He will take you as you are and begin to prepare you in the life and world you live in.
Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart feel lonely and long for heaven and home, when Jesus is my portion, my constant friend is He. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. I sing because I'm happy. Yes, I sing because I'm free, for His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches over me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches. I know He's watching over me. I know He's watching over me. And I sing because I'm happy. Oh Lord, you know I sing because I'm free, for His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He's watching over me. His eye is on the sparrow, I know watching over me. And I know He's watching over me.
In the fall of 1936, Billy Frank entered a Christian college in Tennessee. But in spite of growing passion for Jesus, his aimlessness still haunted him. As that first semester wound down, he wrote to his mother, "I know that I know Jesus Christ, but I've lost my feeling. I can't seem to get anywhere in prayer. I don't feel anything." Ever been there? She wrote back to him great words of wisdom. God is testing you. He tells us to walk not by feeling, but by faith. And when you don't feel anything, God may be closer to you than ever before. Through the darkness and through the fog, put your hand up by faith. You'll sense the touch of God. In that time of doubt and uncertainty, Billy raised his hand. Our third observation of God's calling, His promise to bring it to life.